And Amanda's here to talk about one of her ancestors and about a book that she's written about it, and she does have some for sale if you wish for at the end of the presentation. But it's about I've read her book, and it's about an amazing person called Edward. So Amanda, I'll pass over to you to tell us all about Edward and about tea.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sit down because you're this.
He's had so much. Gil's done this before. My name is Amanda, and I've recently written and published a book about Edward, who is my distant relative from 200 years ago. My history is that I was born and raised in Wellington. I'm very proud to be from Pororoa and Tawa, and so some of the faces that I see today are a little familiar to me, so that's very interesting. I hope that today will begin a new chapter in all of our lives in terms of appreciation for tea. I have fallen in love with tea when I discovered Edward's history. Edward was born on the Welsh border where it meets Shropshire, and he grew up in very difficult circumstances, as a lot of our ancestors did. And he was sent to London to become a grocer and tea dealer. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into his life. And here is the published work. It's called Strange Pages from the Diary of a Tea Dealer. And the reason the pages are strange or curious or amazing is because he truly did have a curious incident happen to him, and it was front page of the London newspapers every day for weeks. So the most incredible ancestor to find in my tree accidentally, and I would challenge all of you to think about your own family stories. It was only when I started talking to my mother about her family that really put it in context, and some family law came out about it. The reason he has such an amazing story is because of the wealth that he generated from China tea. And he became extraordinarily wealthy, and therefore there are pictures from the newspapers. There are stories about the land that he owned and passed on to our family members. The wealth attracted a lot of problems, which you'll hear about in a minute. And basically it preserved his story because there was so much money made from tea, because he became so accidentally wealthy through a series of ridiculous accidents that only seemed to happen to Edward and nobody else. The money built up quickly, and then he really got into trouble, because when you have money, what happens? People attach themselves to you and try and take away what you have. I will, as we go through, have some props and things to help with our imagination today, all about tea. I don't know if you love tea like me or will learn to love tea, but I think there are new ways in which we can appreciate what tea really meant 200 years ago and where it came from, because tea was not grown anywhere in the world, the tea that we like to drink traditionally in a tea bag. It was not grown in India or in Sri Lanka, Ceylon. Those lands had not yet cultivated the tea commercially. It was only from China And the Chinese were extremely proud and had developed a long history of processing it and shipping it. So as we go along, I'd encourage you to look at the little leaf that I've given you there, and we'll talk about the leaves, the fresh young leaves at the top and the bud, and we'll talk about the pluckings and how they make a tea, or at least they did 200 years ago, instead of being all ground up together and put into a tea bag. So I'll just begin now. Strange pages from the Diary of a Tea Dealer. So you'll hear just how did a young tea dealer, Edward, become so famous and accidentally wealthy, and what did his despicable mother do to get her hands on Edward's gold? So we all have that one family member who sticks out either for their good heart and kind nature, as Edward certainly was. He was gentle, timid, tall, long nose, big ears, head like a turnip, and he truly was an extraordinary boy, talkative, amazed at everything. Perhaps some of those genes may have passed down a little bit to become someone who is still excited about tea. So now I'm going to play you the ad for the book, one of the ads for the book. I hope you like it. There may not be any sound, but there is sound with the ad. Let's see how we go. Let's give it a try. So meet Edward, the world's first celebrity tea dealer. Let's find out about Edward. It's not going to. Maybe if oh, there we go. And I should introduce the topics. We're going to learn how to become a famous tea dealer. We're going to hear about some extraordinary characters, including Edward's magnificent lawyer. Boy, did he need a good lawyer, and he got the best in London because he could afford it. China tea and how to buy it. It will look different to the tea bag you're used to. Some discoveries from the British Museum. And then we're going to taste the tea if I can find a brave volunteer. And then I'll talk to you for one moment about my publishing journey, and what I'm going to try and do is excite you to record your own story and get it out there. Okay, here we go. I'll just hit play and we'll see if it works. Okay. So, whoops, it's going to do it twice. So basically, here we are on the next slide. I think it's going to load. There we are. How to become a famous tea dealer. So here we are with Edward with his top hat, outside his shop, a pencil drawing. So you can see immediately that tea dealers, we don't have a sign out the front of our shops these days saying tea dealer. What on earth is a tea dealer? Do you need a tea dealer in your life? Why are they so important? Or at least why were they important 200 years ago? Well, tea, as you probably know from everything you've already read about tea was expensive. It wasn't just for everyone. It wasn't drunk by everyone. It was drunk by the rich because it came so far from across the sea in China. And I've got a little Year of the Snake stuffed toy there to remind you that we're talking about China and not India. So what a long way it came from. The Dutch first brought it back and they gave it to their royal king and he adored it, and then it spread to the Portuguese and the Spanish who really liked it. Then it came to England. So it was locked in boxes because it was one of the most precious things in the house. They didn't want the servants touching it. The servant would bring in the hot water or the kettle from where you prepared it over the fire, but they didn't touch it. And a silver caddy spoon would be used to scoop tea leaves into a vessel. And then remember when you used to strain your tea leaves? Remember when that was the only way your grandmother made the tea? And you used to love looking at the tea leaves in the bottom and somebody would ask you or tell you your fortune. What fun we used to have. That's a glimpse into the past when tea was food for the poorest among us. How many mothers went without food and had a cup of tea? How many people all over the world still do that? Well, tea dealers were important because they would source the best for you, or they would trick you into buying adulterated tea. Edward had none of that nonsense. He absolutely refused, and because he loved tea, because he'd fallen in love with it and had this very long nose that was good for sniffing out the best tea, he was naturally able to use his talents to give people good tea, and they liked it, and they didn't like being hoodwinked by the others, so they started to come to him, and he was generous because he was kind-hearted. So he attracted people naturally. His customers fell in love with him. They would crowd into the room, and he would have 100 tea chests all spread out, like you've seen here in front of you. The different kinds of tea would be spread out. The yellow, the white tea, the pu'er, the red tea, which we know as black tea now, that goes in our tea bags. There would be all different kinds of tea that we perhaps aren't exposed to today. And you think to yourself, gosh, where can I get a hold on some of this? Maybe I do need a tea dealer so that I can try some. Well, they would all crowd together in the room, and then somebody who could afford a good blend, or somebody who was just wanting a moderately priced one, would say to Edward, right, I think I like that from smelling it. And then he'd, right there and then, he'd be bending over all day, mixing up blends and putting one with another and saying to the person, oh no, I don't think you like that, or yes, let's give that a try. Put a couple together, usually a poorer one that would give you lots and lots of liquor, black, in the bottom of your pot so that it would go far, and then a very delicate or juicy or delicious one. And he would also be very careful to make that it appealed to the eye, because you drink tea with the eye as well as with the tongue. And so that's why you probably need a tea dealer in your life.